Good morning, and welcome to your morning cereal. Okay, good morning, and welcome to Wednesday. It's the middle of the week, people. Pat yourself on the back. That's got to count for something, right? And great news. You know how I always like to bring you good news. And the good news today is, and do this in the most appropriate way possible, obviously, but we can all celebrate National Hug Day. And don't sleep on hugs, A, they're great for the soul, but B, there's science behind them, if you're into that sort of stuff. But the science has proven the benefits of a simple hug. First, there's a natural release of oxytocin, the love hormone. And secondly, hugs lower blood pressure and heart rate. They boost your immune system. And hugs improve your mood, they improve social connections, and they reduce your loneliness. It's almost like we should be hugging on a daily basis. But wait, I've done the research for you, and it turns out we do need hugs on a daily basis. Now, according to the Google research, which makes me an expert, as you know, we need 4 hugs a day just to survive, 8 hugs for just regular maintenance, and 12 hugs a day for growth. Again, the more you know. Okay, today's quotes, one fun, nostalgic quote, and then a second quote to tease our book review later in the episode. Hopefully, one of these quotes will speak to you today and jumpstart your day in a positive direction. The first quote is from Morgan Freeman, who said, quote, "Never let pride be your guiding principle. Let your accomplishments speak for you," end quote. And too often we get too caught up in what other people think about us and trying to control that narrative when we have no control over what others think. But you do have control over your life, over what you do with it. So focus on that, and the rest will take care of itself. And today's teaser quote from the book review is, "Men must be taught as if you taught them not, and things unknown proposed as things forgot." Now, as usual, we'll unpack that one here in just a minute during the book review segment. But first, let's jump into our usual dose of fun and historic facts from this day in history. Now, today's news facts and birthdays are for February 12th. In 1809, British naturalist Charles Darwin, who developed the theory of evolution by natural selection, he was born. Also born in the same year of 1809, Abraham Lincoln. He was born near Hodgenville, Kentucky. Then in 1909, the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, it was founded in the U.S. The NAACP is one of the oldest and most influential civil rights organizations in the United States. Then in 1934, American basketball player Bill Russell, he was born. He was one of the greatest centers in NBA history, and he was the first black coach of a major professional American sports team, the Boston Celtics. Then in 1982, Wayne Gretzky, he scored his 153rd point of the season, which broke the NHL record at the time. In 1994, you might remember this, thieves broke into the National Gallery in Oslo and they stole the Scream. That's that iconic painting that we all know so well by Edvard Munch. Actually, it was one in a series of 4 and it was recovered several months later. Then in 1999, U.S. President Bill Clinton, he was acquitted by the Senate in his impeachment trial. All right, happy birthday if today is your birthday. You share a birthday with Arsenio Hall. He turns 69 today. In the voice of Thanos, Josh Brolin, he's 56 today. And Christina Ricci, she's 45. Now, the number one song on this date in 1991 was "Gonna Make You Sweat, Everybody Dance Now" by C+C Music Factory. You would remember the beginning of this song as it starts off fast with the singing "Everybody Dance Now" lyric, followed by the music dropping in. It's been featured in many movies and many TV shows, including 3 times on The Office. One of them was when Michael Scott plays the song through an air vent to entice employees upstairs to visit his new dance club cafe. Well, the song held the number 1 spot for 5 weeks in 1990, and then again for 2 more weeks, including this date in 1991. And the number 1 movie on this date in 1990 was Driving Miss Daisy, starring Jessica Tandy, Morgan Freeman, and Dan Aykroyd. And it's a movie that touched on racism and aging, and it won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Actress and Best Picture. Interestingly, Morgan Freeman reprised his role for the movie, playing the same character in the original off-Broadway production. Freeman was nominated for Best Actor, but he lost out to Daniel Day-Lewis for his role in My Left Foot, which I've never even heard of. Okay, well, let's move on to some personal growth here in the book review segment of Morning Serial. This is where we take a few moments to reflect on lessons learned from the current book we're reading. Currently, we're reading through Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a timeless book that is consistently in all the must-read lists, and it's packed with rock-solid advice and actions for all of us to use and build healthy foundational concepts to live by. Yesterday, we finished up Chapter 1, entitled You Can't Win an Argument, and we learned Carnegie's principle number 1, which is the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. And Carnegie made the point that there are no winners in an argument because much of the time you haven't changed the other person's position, and you definitely haven't made a friend out of them. Use it as an opportunity that you can learn from and decide if it even really matters to engage in an argument. If it will only make you feel better and negatively affect your own credibility and character, then use some of the tools that we discussed to move through and past that situation. Which brings us to today. And today we begin Chapter 2 of Part 2, which is entitled How to Win People to Your Way of Thinking. And the second chapter in this section, which we are beginning today, is entitled A Sure Way of Making Enemies and How to Avoid It. Carnegie begins this chapter by asking the reader how often they feel they are correct. And apparently, Theodore Roosevelt had hoped to be correct about 75% of the time, and he is considered one of the most distinguished men of the 20th century. So, for you or I, and Carnegie includes himself in this, he asks if maybe being correct 55% of the time is reasonable to think that we are right. And maybe those odds are okay on Wall Street, but Carnegie asks if we're only right some percentage of the time, as low as 55%, then should we really be telling people they are wrong? That's like taking advice on how to shoot free throws from Shaquille O'Neal. And I love you, Shaq. But Carnegie is suggesting probably not. And be aware that this is not just with words that we speak. And Carnegie says that we can tell people they are wrong, quote, by a look or an intonation or a gesture just as eloquently as you can in words, end quote. If you've been with us through Carnegie's book review, you know that Carnegie is going to say that you are not going to make a friend out of someone who you are telling them that they are wrong, because you are striking a direct blow at their intelligence and therefore not making them feel important. You're putting them on the defense, and they'll want to strike back. All this, and you won't even have changed their mind. Carnegie says to never approach a conversation by telling someone that you are going to prove something to them. It's saying, I'm smarter than you. I'm going to make you change your mind. And they are immediately going to be mentally preparing to go to battle with you, even before you begin. Carnegie makes the point that it's hard enough to change people's minds when we do, and that we are only handicapping ourselves or making it harder for ourselves by beginning from this somewhat combative starting point. Instead, Carnegie suggests, if you are going to try and prove something, then don't let others know it from the get-go. Carnegie says, quote, do it so subtly, so adroitly that no one will feel that you are doing it, end quote. Here, Carnegie provides a few quotes throughout history that support his thesis. Alexander Pope, who said, quote, men must be taught as if you taught them not, and things unknown proposed as things forgot, end quote. And Galileo said of this 400 years ago, quote, you cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself, end quote. And Lord Chesterfield said this to his son, quote, be wiser than other people if you can, but do not tell them so, end quote. And lastly, Socrates often said to his followers, quote, one thing only I know, and that is that I know nothing, end quote. Carnegie says that he's not wiser than any of these men who all knew the tribulations of trying to teach people. So Carnegie said he quit telling people they are wrong. And there's a rub there, right? Carnegie's not saying we can't inform people that they may be wrong, even if we know we're 100% right. But he is saying the way we go about it has an art to it. This is how Carnegie suggests opening up that kind of conversation. Quote, well, now look, I thought otherwise, but I might be wrong. I frequently am, and if I'm wrong, I want to put it right. Let's examine the facts." End quote. Carnegie says that there's magic in those words, and nobody is ever going to object to us saying, quote, "I may be wrong. Let's examine the facts." End quote. Well, we almost went through an entire segment without a classic Carnegie story, so we'll end on this short one today. A customer service agent working at a car dealership often found himself in difficult conversations that came to a boil, and he himself had become callous towards the customers, which caused loss of business and general unpleasantness. So the customer service rep decided to change his approach and instead open up his conversations like this, quote, "Our dealership has made so many mistakes that I am frequently ashamed. We may have erred in your case as well. Tell me about it." End quote. As you might expect, this approach disarmed the upset patrons, and they became more receptive after they had told their story. Carnegie says this, quote, "You will never get into trouble by admitting that you may be wrong. That will stop all argument and inspire your opponent to be just as fair and open and broad-minded as you are. It will make him want to admit that he too may be wrong." End quote. Well, we'll end there today, but remember, there's a lot to be said and gained for those of us that can put ego and pride aside in how we deal with people. Well, what day is it, people? It's not hump day today, it's hug day. And remember, you need at least 12 to grow, so you better get on hugging. Come back tomorrow as Carnegie tells us a story about what happens when you tell a Supreme Court justice he's wrong. Thanks for joining us today, and have a fantastic day. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Morning Serial podcast on the One Life Live It channel. You can find more episodes and videos by visiting our YouTube channel and the website at Sean Inglis and at SeanInglis.com, where you can also follow our other podcasts, the Mr. and Mrs. Inglis podcast and the Life Happens podcast. In these other podcasts, we'll dive deeper into everyday issues, self-improvement and well-being, business and finance, and we welcome special guests too. So join us. It'll be a good time, I promise. Thanks again for listening. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you tomorrow.